Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Insider Secrets to Successful Grant Writing. This is one of my favorite topics because grant writing has been something that I've been able to master. And I will say, I have shifted this. I have shifted this presentation quite a few times. Um, for those of you who've participated in the evaluations that I send out at the end, just want you to know that I listen to them. As a result of the evaluation, I have shifted this presentation, um, but I'll explain that a little bit. Let's go ahead and jump in. So today's topic is insider secrets to successful grant writing. And it's a very important topic for nonprofits because so many of our organizations rely on grants. In this session, however, we're going to talk about how to build a strong grant portfolio. We're going to cover the fundraiser's perspective, and we're going to talk about my writing tips and tricks of the trade as a successful grant writer, as a funder, and a reviewer. So, from those different perspectives, I hope to give you a comprehensive view of what it is um, to write a successful competitive proposal. All right. So first things first. A lot of times people jump into into their organizations like, I have a 501c3. Let me get some grants. And here's the truth. Um, Having a 501c3 means that the organization is eligible, right? It's the first step to qualifying. If you participated in um, one of my previous webinars, we broke down the difference between what it means to be eligible and to qualify. But oftentimes, what people fail to realize is that they're competing. They're competing for the same grant, and funders are looking for nonprofits who have a track record, right? It's like, yeah, you could write a program, but there are people out there who's been doing this longer. And so there's a higher likelihood that they will succeed. So, what is it that you can do then to create a competitive proposal? Um, Before we get started, this is what I was talking about at the beginning. Grant writing is a craft, right? Uh, it took me over a decade to hone the craft of grant writing. I was an English major and I'm a storyteller by nature, which made the transition into grant writing a whole lot easier because your most successful grants are going to be inspirational stories. But I need to say upfront that no one can learn how to write a grant in 60 minutes or 12 months for that matter. I said at the beginning that I've shifted this webinar because I've gotten feedback from people who've participated. They would say things like, great information, but I didn't learn how to write a grant. And it's like, really, I can't teach you how to write a grant in 60 minutes. It's just impossible. It took me 10 years. But I can share my insider secrets, tricks of the trade, and tips from those different perspectives, a funder, a reviewer, and a grant writer to help you craft a more competitive proposal. And that's what I aim to do today. It's going to be a lot different than just talking at you. I'm going to give you actual examples of how I would approach writing a competitive grant. But successful grant writing is an art, and it's based on three factors. And if you use these things repeatedly, it leads to a successful grant writing strategy. And that's what you want. You don't want to just have successful grants. You want to have a successful grant writing strategy, right? The three things that you need to have a successful grant writing strategy is a quality proposal. Quality. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. In innovative programs and financial management. Those are the three things you need to have a successful grant writing strategy. I have a question for you. How long do you think it takes from research to submission to write a quality proposal? Not just to write a proposal, to write a quality proposal. Do you think it's 5 hours, 10 hours, a week, 2 weeks, or 4 weeks? From research to submission. What do you think? You guys are just amazing. Absolutely. So I'll tell you, at the very least, it's going to take 4 weeks. At the very least. I am a seasoned grant writer, and if someone comes to me and say, Amber, this proposal is due in 30 days, I'm like, ah. If I haven't worked with them, right? If we haven't been working on a proposal and it really just needs to be massaged to the RFP, I like to have at least 6 months. And people are saying, well, how do you get 6 months? Well, a lot of times the funders will put out the same call, and maybe you won't get funded, you'll get feedback, you tweak it. That's how I like to that's how I like to increase my stats, right? Especially with government grants. They tend to have the same call every year. And so every year you get to tighten up your proposal. But if someone comes to me and say, Amber, can I pay you to write this grant? I'm like, when is it due? In 2 weeks? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because I don't have the time that I need to massage it and make it pop and make it competitive. There's too much life going on, right? If I was just in my room doing nothing else, then that's different. But as we know, life happens. Why is that important? Well, because I find that nonprofit leaders tend to just push out grants. Oh, I'm writing a grant this week. Oh, I'm writing this grant. Oh, I'm writing this grant. The reality is a nonprofit cannot survive off of grants solely. If you are trying to support your nonprofit with just grants, I'm going to tell you it cannot happen, right? Why? Because of the time commitment required, right? It takes between 20 to 100 hours to develop a competitive grant, right? Then it takes 6 weeks to 12 months before the funder awards it. And even then, there's no guarantee. And if you're paying a grant writer, you're paying a grant writer, you're paying. So the investment involved in trying to support your nonprofit off of grants is really high. Then in terms of sustainability, there are other organizations competing against you, right? Then, as we know, grants don't fully cover operational costs. They only want you to get between 10 and 25%. And most of the time it's 10% for overhead. Those are salaries, the things that you need the most. Then, because you're constantly writing grants, that means your organization isn't being responsive to your community. And then lastly, funders tend to fund programs and not operations. And so with that said, it is just a challenge. It's a haul to try and fund your organization solely off of grants. That's why I always say grants should be a part of your funding strategy. Every nonprofit should have 10 streams of revenue, and grants should be a part of that strategy. But I need you to understand that winning a grant is not a numbers game. Some people think, oh, if I just put out 25, one of them will hit. That is not the truth. Winning grants is not a numbers game. It's very intentional. And it's really, really based off of having a quality proposal. What do you think the number one reason is that reviewers say grants are denied? Do you think it's because the organization didn't submit the requested documents, that the grant's goals and objectives were not measurable, that the applicant did not follow the guidelines, or that the proposed project lacked a clear need? What do you think? What is the number one reason? No one? Okay. So all of these are reasons, but the number one reason that a grant is denied is because the applicant didn't follow the guidelines. They'll go in and they'll, just either not do something or do something that the funder said not to do. And as I said before, funders looking for reasons to say no to your application because there are too many applications. So if they say we want a 12 point font and you do 11.5, they get they can eliminate you. If they say, do not submit anything else and you submit your newsletter, then they can eliminate you. This is the number one reason why grants get denied, is because the applicant didn't follow the guidelines. The rest of them are on the list, but this is the number one reason. One of the contracts that I have is with Cal State Fullerton. And I support faculty in getting their research funded. And I say that I'm a glorified reader because I swear that's what I do. I read the RFP and people will say, oh, we didn't get funded. I'm like, you didn't get funded because you didn't you didn't follow the instructions. So I help to increase the success rate of my faculty just by reading, because they will tell you right there in the guidelines what it is that they want and what they don't want. But what's also important to understand is what is the likelihood of your grant being funded now? And I'm saying this based off of a skilled person writing, right? 1/3 of foundations receive fewer than 50 proposals. 38% of them funded at least half of the proposals. 6% received more than 1,000 proposals each, and 11% of them funded at least half of the proposals. If you do the math, you realize that that is a small proportion, right? If 1/3 of the foundations received less than 50 and funded 38% of them, or if 6% who received more than 1,000 only funded half of the proposals, 35% of the funders funded 50% or more of the grants. So that pot is really small, but it is important. So I just wanted to share that with you because I run into a lot of people who's like, I need a grant writer. I need a grant writer. You need to build up your individual donors and have multiple streams of revenue. But grants are a part of your strategy. So we're going to talk about how to build your grant writing portfolio. Because writing a grant isn't just about looking for an RFP and just sitting down and writing a grant. It is a strategy, right? So the first thing you want to do is to tell a sexy story that demonstrates needs. And people are like, sexy, Amber? Yes, I say sexy because when I think of sexy, I think of something that gets me excited, something that I'm attracted to, something that inspires me, a sexy story. How do you get a sexy story? Well, you need data. You need something that's going to prove what it is that you are saying there's a need for. You want to make bold promises. Academic writing informs. Regular writing informs. But grant writing, it's supposed to inspire. And you get that through making bold promises. That's where the innovation is. If you're doing a tutoring class and you're tutoring just like everyone else, oh, we're helping them to increase their grades. That's not inspiring. That's not bold. That's not innovative. But if you're saying our goal is to increase the number of females who go into STEAM, we have them working with female engineers, that is innovative. That is different, right? At the end of the day, a funder wants to know that you can do what you promise in your RFP, the impact that you're going to make. A lot of times people write their grants and they never even mention, well, what is the impact that this program is going to make? You want to prove that you can show tangible proof, right? Your results, measurable goals and outcomes. So many times people write and say, oh, we're going to change the world. We're going to da 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 da. How? What is measurable? How can you prove it? How at the end of this grant will I know you were successful? Results. And then you want to prove that you can manage money. You don't have to manage a lot of money. You may have $500 in your bank account, but can you manage it? And that's why it's important for you to have systems in place that can produce things like a financial statement, right? So this is how you build your grant writing portfolio. These are all of the elements that you're going to need. The most requested grant application information by far, hands down, these are the things that you're going to need in any standard grant application. They're going to ask you for your mission statement because a funder needs to match their funding goals with the nonprofit's mission statement. If they are not in alignment, then they won't fund you. They're going to ask you for your agency history, who's your target audience, your program descriptions, your measurable goals and actionable objectives. They're going to ask you for proof of impact, who your key personnel are, your board roster, your annual organization budget, your program budgets, financial statements, list of collaborating partners, and a copy of your IRS approved tax exempt letter. These are the most requested things that a funder is going to ask for during the RFP, request for proposal process. So this is the part, the craft of writing. This is where I'm going to share with you my tips from a grant writer's perspective. Now, it's kind of dense, but again, I kept getting feedback that what I was sharing was not helpful. So this is me trying to be helpful, right? When we're talking about actually writing the proposal, grant writing is a skill, and it can be honed, it can be taught. As I said, I was an English major, so it was a little bit easier for me, but I partnered with a mentor who was an exceptional grant writer, and I learned a lot. I learned the buzzwords. I learned when a funder's asking for this, he means this. And when they're asking for that, they mean that. And those things make a difference, right? It's taking your basic writing to another level. And it's unique to each organization, right? So people want to take the same proposal, copy and paste it into an application. It's okay to start that way, but you have to massage it. As a reviewer, I can tell you that I can tell when someone's copied and pasted an application from another call, because it doesn't answer my question. You can start with copy and paste, but then you need to massage it. That's why you can't do it in 2 hours. That's why you can't do it in a week. You need time to really massage the answer to the question. As I said before, the purpose of writing is to inform, but the purpose of grant writing is to persuade, right? But at the end of the day, you need to understand that writing is fundamental and it can't be taught in hours or weeks. For me, my most successful method of teaching how to write a grant is to edit. Like if you submitted a proposal to me and I would edit and say, this is what I would write, or this is what's missing, then you would go back and rewrite it based off of the edits. That's been my most successful way of teaching someone how to write a grant. But also reviewing examples are helpful. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to review some examples. But there are 8 basic elements of a proposal. You have the executive summary. And in the executive summary, funders want to know who you are, what you do, and what it is that you want to do. In the organization description, you're telling a funder what it is that you're capable of doing and what your proposal says you will do, right? In the needs statement, you're presenting both the data and stories to support the needs for a project or a program. The project objective, it's the result of an activity. It should be realistic and capable of being accomplished within the grant period. Your project description is a summary of the goals, the objectives, and the need for the project in 1 or 2 paragraphs. Evaluation. A lot of organizations fail to put how they're going to evaluate the success of their program, and that's a huge miss. Evaluation says to a funder, I'm going to prove to you that I'm doing what I said I was going to do. So it measures the change, hopefully the progress between the conditions before you carried out your project and the conditions after you carried out your project. Sustainability is really big. What is going to happen if I stop funding you? So the funder wants to know how the project will continue beyond the grant period, and it connects the project to funding strategies. And then finally, a budget. And the budget is a complete and accurate outline of your project costs and their eligibility under the guidelines. So these are the 8 basic elements of a proposal. Take a screenshot of this, because there may be a time when you're like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to write in the executive summary, or I don't know what the purpose of a project objective is. If you take a look at this, you'll be like, oh, okay, I'm going to do a project description. It's the goals, the objectives, and the need for the project. I just find this to be helpful sometimes. Let's talk about a sexy story. So this is a copy of one of my most successful grants with Cal State Fullerton. It is a migrant education program where they take the farm hands and they help them to get GEDs and then go to community college and then hopefully go into Cal State Fullerton to get a degree. And so my faculty member started off with this language. The purpose of this research project is to increase the number of migrant farm workers to obtain a GED, a college degree, or join the military in order to break the cycle of poverty. Due to the migrant nature of farm work, youth and females in particular fail to obtain more than an eighth grade education. As the work is seasonal and based on need, these migrant families move from city to city, picking crops and working fields. This constant motion prevents youth from completing their basic educational foundation. And as a result, youth fall behind or can't produce their transcripts and therefore experience a high rate of incompletion. In order to break these cycles of poverty and low academic attainment, Cal State Fullerton has proposed a program specifically designed to increase the education, career, and social skills of the migrant farm worker community. What do you guys think about that? If you had $5,000, would you fund this program just based off of what's written? Pretty good, right? This is academic writing. This is the rewrite. Southern California is a land of dramatic socioeconomic and cultural contrast between diverse communities, where wealth thrives next to pockets of extreme poverty. The manicured lawns of Orange County and the oceanside estates of San Diego County, two of the wealthiest counties in the nation, are a stark contrast to the extreme poverty of agricultural communities such as Thermal, Palma, located less than 100 miles from these urban centers. Cal State Fullerton is located at the crossroads of these contrasting realities, striving to meet the education and job skills needs of a complex economic landscape, not just for Orange County, but also North San Diego, San Bernardino, Riverside counties. Within this expansive South Coast desert region, boasting 791 miles of modern neighborhoods, live a sizable portion of the 67,400 migrant seasonal farm workers. So you can see how this is more of picturesque. So that was my first rewrite for my faculty. And here is the final. And this is the name of the actual RFP, the happiest place on earth. As one of the 100 wealthiest counties in the nation, Orange County houses the happiest place on earth. But behind the orange curtain lives the OC's lesser known neighbors, the Jornaleros, I can never pronounce that, who help tend over 60,000 acres of regional farmland and help sustain the area's long history of a vibrant agricultural economy. According to a survey, 60% of identified Latino migrant workers in Orange County do not have a high school diploma or equivalency, and 70% have low literacy and English language proficiency. As a function of the 12 to 14-hour workday, exposure to pesticides and dangerous unregulated working conditions, migrant workers suffer disproportionately from a wide array of health and safety risks: bone problems, respiratory illnesses, neuropsychological impairments, allergic reactions, work injuries, and fatalities. Poverty, food insecurity, poor nutrition, and lack of resources to seek early care are also factors that put migrant workers at a significantly higher risk for high blood pressure, high serum cholesterol, overweight, obesity, anemia, and high serum glucose levels. The children in migrant families, potentially 10,000 in Southern California, are profoundly at risk of a variety of unique and debilitating exposures: maltreatment, violence, child labor, pesticides, family separation, and a culture of migrancy that make this demographic one of the most desperate for especially targeted outreach and support. So the difference between this one and the first one, besides the fact that it's more vibrant, the happiest place on earth, we know that's Disneyland, right? Is that you have proof that there is a need, right? This survey says 60% of identified Latino migrant workers don't have a high school diploma. This bone problems, it's all justified by somebody with a PhD. So when we talk about making a case for support, it can't just be your opinion. You need to have someone with specialized knowledge and expert in the field say that this is a problem. Back in the 90s, you could just say whatever, and then the money would just come. Over the years, it's been the funders want to know, can you justify the problem? And so bringing in data is one way of doing it. But also, it didn't start with the goals of this project. That's just informing. That's academic writing. You want to start off with a sexy story, right? As one of the 100 wealthiest counties in the nation, right? So you want to pique somebody's interest. And I'm telling you, as a reviewer, you read the same thing over and over. Everybody's writing for the same thing. And the funder is the expert in the area, but you hear the same thing. Today, we're going to talk about, how to improve education in migrant communities. You just hear the same thing over and over. The purpose of this research project. But when you read something like, wait a minute, behind the orange curtain, it just makes you sit up, right? And I'm just going to also tell you, as a reviewer, when there's a sexy story, you're going to remember it. And you tend to give it more points because you're reading 10 of the same things over and over and over again. But this it's giving you it's giving you something to look forward to. I don't know how else better to say that, except for you're not reading the same things over and over and over. So yeah, there's that. So organization description. Now we're going to go through each part of the grant so that you understand what it is that the funder is really looking for. Because I have people who write, and sometimes they're good writers, but it's very fluffy, very flowery, and it doesn't get to the point of the grant. I tell my people, I count points. Where is the area that is most important to the funder? They let you know because they assign points. If the organization description is 5 points, you're going to get 2-3 paragraphs, right? Funders want to know your mission. They want to know your target audience, who you collaborate with, current and past projects, past grant wins, and to learn more about your leaders. This is how you need to look at the organization description. Out of the countless requests that they receive each year, why should they give to your organization? What makes your organization different? It's in the organization description that you're able to toot your horn, right? You want them to see that you're different, that you're special. So this is my nonprofit, the Institute for Nonprofit Management. And in red, you'll see how I make myself stand out, right? Go straight to the red. Our mission is to make nonprofit management manageable by providing nonprofit founders with easy to understand, easy to implement steps that strengthen their nonprofit. Who is my target audience? Nonprofit founders. You know that right out the bat, right? Since its inception in 2019, the Institute has partnered with grant-making institutions such as LA County Department of Mental Health, Center for Nonprofit Management, USC, Black Equity Collective, Support Black Theater, and the Latino Coalition. Now, I'm saying I have partners, people, organizations who've trusted in me. They're grant-making institutions. They've given me money. So if they trust me, you should trust me, right? What else? To date, through grants totaling $250,000, the Institute of Nonprofit Management has successfully trained over 150 nonprofit leaders, right? So if I've received $250,000, that means I know how to manage money. So now they're going to feel more comfortable with me, right? I can demonstrate impact. I have trained over 150 nonprofit leaders. What am I doing? Building quality collaboration, strengthening infrastructure. And guess what? Having gone through my program, this is my outcome for my nonprofit founders, resulting in 1.6 in grants, 200,000 in contracts, and 50,000 in individual donors. That's the success of the people who've come through my program. That is what a funder's looking for. They want to write you this grant for $250,000. What should they expect in return? Well, it may not be exactly this, but if you've done it before, that means you should be able to do it again. And then you want to pad it a little bit. It's fine for you to toot your own horn, but what are other people saying? Amber's opened my eyes to a whole new way of seeing my role. I'm so pumped right now. I used to struggle trying to figure out what I should be doing to fund my organization. Now I know exactly what to do. I can't wait to implement this plan. I have hope. I want to cry. So if a funder is reading all of these testimonials from real people talking about how amazing you are, this is in your program description, they're going to be like, oh, okay, these people have faith in this organization. So this is what the program description is really about. You showing why they should fund you out of all of the other organizations. What about key personnel? Funders want to know that your organization has qualified individuals running the organization and implementing the program. If you are a volunteer-driven, volunteer-led organization, key personnel is going to be a challenge for you unless you have a training program where you say our volunteers are trained, everybody's getting the same information, they are learning how to report out. If you just say, oh, we have volunteers, your key personnel is going to fall flat. Because with volunteers, they can come, they can go if they want to. A funder is hearing lack of continuity, lack of standardization. But if you have a training program, that's going to change everything. I want to put that out there. But funders want to know who is running this, who's running this. So with over 30 years of experience in nonprofit, corporate, academic, government, and consulting sectors, serving numerous positions ranging from program administrator, grant writer, outreach, blah, 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 giving out over 7 million. So I am saying to the funder, I am the leader that you want because I have 30 years of nonprofit experience. I've given out money, I've raised money, I've been an executive director, I've been a grant writer. So in your key personnel, when you're explaining who your people are, you really want to demonstrate how if they gave you the money, you have the staff that are qualified to deliver on this grant. A lot of times people will just fluff, oh, Amber's been with the organization for 20 years. That means nothing. What are her skill sets? She's been with the organization for 20 years, but she's also got a master's in so-and-so. She sat on this board. She's, if she's in the fundraising position, she's raised this amount. Funders want to know that you have qualified people in the position. Needs statement. It's also called a needs-based statement, statement of need. It's where you explain to the funder what your organization needs and why. Your needs should be based on documented community need, backed by quantitative research. This is sort of like what we were talking about with the migrant program. You want to be able to have your funder clear that there is a need, and your organizational history demonstrates how you guys are the ones to meet the need. So, for example, with my example, this is what I wrote. Philanthropy is broken. Like most modern American systems, philanthropy has always existed at the intersection of capitalism and racial injustice, thus perpetuating the same social and economic ills that it promises to fix. A lack of diverse representation in the boards and executive leadership of philanthropy perpetuates this systemic racial injustice. And according to Race to Lead, there's my subject matter expert, people of color comprise only 20% of philanthropic leadership, while almost all of the work is with and for people of color. These racial inequities compounded by the agenda setting and decision-making processes. When the board members and executive leaders of the biggest funding institutions are predominantly white, it is white voices that set the agenda and success metric criteria for solving the problems of Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities around the world. I went in hard, y'all, because my point was, this is the landscape. And if this is the landscape, then our communities aren't getting a fair shot. So I go in and I talk about what the barriers are. The biggest fundraising barriers for Black nonprofit leaders are internalized racial stereotypes that shape the ideologies about the capabilities of Black leaders. Here's the truth. When funders put out RFPs and they get them from Black and Brown led organizations, they already see us as inferior. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm countering that because I am going to train nonprofits to understand what it is that funders want, the way they want it, and to give it to them that way. Until Black and Brown led nonprofits understand what the rules of engagements are, they're going to continue to submit these RFPs that don't look how the funder wants them to look. I'm saying I will train them to submit RFPs that look the part. That's the difference. I'm not saying I'm going to change racism, institutional race. I can't. I'm bad, but I ain't that bad, y'all. But what I can do is have what it is that Black and brown led nonprofits submit, I can teach what that should look like. And so for me, that's just a shift. It's different. And from a funder's perspective, because they're always saying, oh, we can't find, Black and brown nonprofits to, they can't pass the eligibility screening. So that's what I focus on. I focus on getting Black and brown nonprofits to pass the eligibility screening. All of the rest, now what do you have to say, right? These problems may seem complex, but the solutions are simple. Philanthropists and funding institutions must make a commitment to ensure equity in their practices, from funding down to program application. And guess who's going to help them do it? Right? So the Institute for Nonprofit Management has taken a more practical approach. Help nonprofit leaders understand the rules of engagement. Our passionate and committed nonprofit leaders have the talent, skills, and passion. They just lack the knowledge required to pass the legal eligibility screenings that systematically weed them out. I use a culturally based approach, and I provide the founders with the information they didn't know. So I lay it all out there. And when we talk about, this goes back to what is the problem and what are the community needs that you are addressing. You need to lay it all out there. I'm confident in my writing and I have really good outcomes, so I can push the envelope. And I know who my funders are, my potential funders. My potential funders want big, bold statements. They want to attack the system. And so that's what I give them. And how do I know that? Because I read their guidelines. But when we talk about stating the problem, it always goes back to being able to prove it, right? So the Race to Lead provides the data that supports what I'm saying. All right. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Just raise your hand if you have any. The project description. This is where you want to share your new program or the expansion of your existing program. Now, your project needs to be realistic and impactful. There'll be times when, as a funder, I'll have organizations say, we're going to change the community with $10,000. I don't, that's not realistic, right? You can say, we're going to change a family, or we're going to change a school. We're going to change an after-school program. And as a result, those kids that are in the after-school program are going to influence families that then will influence communities. But to say with $10,000, we're going to transform a whole community, I know better than that. I am a funder. I've been doing this for quite some time. If we haven't been able to do it with the 63 million that we've put into this community, 10,000 is not going to do it. So you want to make bold statements, but they need to be realistic, right? So you want to demonstrate a well thought out, executable plan with resources. So that is staffing, supplies, collaborators, marketing and outreach, and how you will execute. All of this should take place in your program description. So I give a little background. I'm proposing an affordable, culturally based membership website where founders and executive directors are provided with online webinars, live workshops, coaching, as well as toolkits, templates, forms, workbooks. So this is what the program is. My funder knows exactly what I'm giving. I'm giving live workshops, webinars. They're going to have access to toolkits, templates, right? Each program is staged on the nonprofit success path. Then I give them what the path is. Either they're thinking about starting a nonprofit, they're starting one, they're developing their purpose. So I map out what the success path is. The online workshops are delivered in small 10-minute videos accompanied by a short 5-question prompt, right? And then I cover all of the topics. And then the founders complete a rigorous 100-question exam at the end, and they'll get some type of certificate. During the live workshops, the founders meet once a week for 90 minutes on Thursdays for 12 months. And so at the end of the day, if a funder wanted to know what my project or my program is, this is it in a nutshell, right? I talk about what they're going to get, what it's going to do, how long it's going to be, how long it's going to run, right? You even know it's going to happen on Thursdays from 6 to 7. That's very detailed, and I know it. You could say once a week for an hour. You don't have to go the actual date. But the point of the telling the funder about the program or project is not to be general. This is where you go very specific. What is the program, right? How are you going to deliver it? How often are you going to deliver it? And how long are you going to deliver it? This is super, super important. How will you measure the impact? Defining metrics of success, which are your outputs, your outcomes, and your evaluations, are the hallmark of this section, right? We all know the SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable. And if you do it right, they'll actually help you to tell your story. Our next session is on the logic model. I'm gonna explain what it is and how to use it, but this is a great place to put your logic model because it is a visual of your SMART goals. But basically, this is what project goals and objectives should look like. Take a screenshot of this because the next time you're writing your grant and you're getting to this part where they're like, what are your goals? You want to look at this and say, ooh, I didn't include, the percentages. The goal of the executive management training program is to certify over 1,000 nonprofit community leaders. That is my goal. 200 during year 1 and 200 each year after. So it's a 5-year program, right? The success of the program will be determined by the following outcomes. 80% of the organization participants will experience continuous operations for 4 years after participating in the program. Can I measure that? Yes. I can pick up the phone or send out a survey saying, is your nonprofit still active? I'll do it year 2, 3, and 4. If after year 4, I get a bounce back, but I did say 80%. You never say 100% because you can't control it. 50% of the organizations participating in the program will double their current budget. Listen to me. Most of my nonprofits, their budgets are 0. So to double that is a win for me, right? Or if the budgets are 50,000 or whatever, it doesn't matter. Because I teach my nonprofits to diversify their funding streams, 10 streams of revenue, I can confidently say that the organizations in my organization will double their budget. 100% of the program participants will increase their administrative knowledge and skills in nonprofit management. 100%. How do I determine that? With a survey. In the beginning, I give you 5 questions and I'll say, what's the definition of indirect costs? And I'll say, how much of indirect costs does a funder usually allow? So I'll ask these questions in the beginning. You won't know the answers, but by the time you finish, you can answer the questions. So now I've proven that 100% of my participants have increased their administrative knowledge. 80% of program participants will express an increase in their belief to successfully run and fund their organizations. This one I know for certain because that's the number one thing I get from people coming through my program. I no longer have, imposter syndrome. I understand what a nonprofit is. I understand what a funder wants. So 80% of them will come out saying, I feel confident in my leadership now. And then the last one, a 20% increase in direct services by the organization. You will see 20% increase in direct services. So when you are writing your goals and objectives, you should increase something or decrease. You can decrease teen pregnancy. You can decrease participation in delinquent behavior. You can decrease the dropout rate. When we talk about measurable goals and objectives, you're increasing something or you are decreasing something or you're eliminating something. A funder wants to know, okay, come June 30th, if I look at your results, let me line them up. Any questions with measurable goals and objectives? The budget. Funders want a written description of your budget detailed by line item. And they usually, it's an Excel sheet You have the numbers, and then on the side of it, it's called a budget narrative. Many times your funders will ask you for a spreadsheet and then a budget narrative. But it's important that your budget and your written narrative, so that project description where you're asking for the money, that they line up. What do I mean by that? So you're describing your project, you're saying, oh yeah, we're going to take them on field trips. But then when you get to your budget, there's no line item for a bus. How are they getting to the field trip? So we look for those things. We read the narrative and we have the budget right there. If you say, oh yeah, we're going to, hire 15 people, and then in the budget you have 5 people, those inconsistencies are reasons to eliminate your RFP, your application. So the budget is super important because we compare it to your narrative. The last thing you should do before you submit a grant is pull your budget out and read your narrative and make sure that everything that's in that narrative is in the budget. If it's not in the budget, remove it from your narrative. That is the number one way I eliminate folks from funding, because it's inconsistent. And here's the thing, when you're writing your proposal, you're changing it. You're talking to your collaborators and you're like, can you do this? They're like, no, we can't do that. So you go in and you change it. But you've already put your budget together. So you want to make sure that the last thing that you do, which is why you want to give yourself 4 weeks, because those last 3 days, I take 2 days in between. And then I have fresh eyes, because your brain will fill in things for you. But if you take 2 days and then in that last week, you read it, you can catch those things. And it'll look something like this, but for your overhead, it's $125,000. You want to explain. People will say, salaries for staff. No, that's not enough. The administrative costs are the fees for services delivered by 30-year veteran Amber Wynn. Her hourly rate is $150 an hour. She will be working on this project for 833 hours, 15 hours a week for 12 months. That's how you get to 125. That's how detailed your budget narrative should be. If you're only working 33% on this program, then you're going to explain, this is for Laura MacArthur. She's going to work 33% on this project. She's going to be responsible for oversight of the program, networking, making sure that the reports are submitted on time. Like, very specific. It's not just for overhead or for salaries. Materials and supplies. People will say materials needed to no. Templates, toolkits, letters, forms, resources for 1,000 program participants. There are the supplies that are needed to implement the program. So supplies, be specific. Pens, paper, like a funder don't make them have to guess. Let them read it and say, oh, okay. T-shirts, to paint the T-shirts, like, be very specific. Systems. I have people say, oh, it's software and equipment. Like, online software systems required to run and operate the training programs. Which ones? Squarespace, membership portal, Interact, ActiveCampaign. List them all. Then it makes your funder feel confident that you're using the money for specific and not this general, right? This is a big one. People will say, to market the program. No, ad buys for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Like, be very specific. Very, very detailed. Someone asked about sustainability. This is huge. As a funder, I want to know that I'm not funding a sinking ship. I need to know that if I invest $250,000 into your organization, after that funding stops, your program's not going to go kaput, right? They want to know, if they invest in this program, how will it continue after the funding ends? I've had people say to me, well, I'm going to apply back to you for again. No, that is not my role as a funder. My role as a funder is not to fund your program. My role as a funder is to find nonprofits who share the same funding goal that I have, like that's your mission, and we partner together on a project. But it's not to fund your organization. Yes, Diane.
Isn't it equally important to factor in, like, the sustainability, your fiscal, like, do you have a fiscal component to sustain growth. Because if you're just grant writing to get money, thinking, okay, I'll put everything in place once I get the funding, how do you sustain that? Like they're all tied together, right?
They are. And
Okay.
and you have to read the guidelines for the funder. So some organizations believe in capacity building and professional development because they understand when you grow your leadership, you grow your organization. Some funders only fund programs. They believe that a nonprofit is a business. It's just a business with a philanthropic purpose. And it is your and your board's responsibility to fund things like training and professional development. So you just got to be careful when you're talking to which funder what their focus is. Some of them are like, yeah, you want to buy a CRM, a client relations management system, so that you can increase the capacity of your executive director. Bet. That is capacity building. That's also sustainability, right? You're not burning out your people. You're able to be more efficient and effective with your reporting, right? Because you can do trends now, you can all of that. But if the funder's like, well, that's your responsibility, that could also get you eliminated. So you just want to be careful about the funder. But yes, most definitely. I'm going to tell you from a fund development perspective, sustainability is a key component to your organization's long-term viability. If you're just funding for right now, and just funding for right now, and just funding for right now, you're not going to be around. You're just not. So what do you say to this question? How will this program be funded beyond our funding? I get clients, Amber, what do I say to that? Well, you tell them that you're going to continue to receive funding beyond the current funding because your board has committed to incorporating the program into its annual funding strategy. And we've submitted however many number of grants. So what they hear is, okay, so there is some action towards sustainability. If you say, I got nothing, there's no guarantee that you're going to get these grants, but the fact that you are submitting lets them know, okay, they're thinking about the future. They're trying to secure additional funding. I always put in there that the board has committed to incorporating this program into their funding strategy because it shows that your leadership is committed, right? And it also shows that you're not just depending on this current funder. I've got 6 grants out specifically for this program. So that's an easy one, right? Let them know, yeah, I have other things going out. You can say, we've got fundraisers planned, we've got a gala, we've got, but that's what they want to hear. Basically, this question, tell us about your sustainability. We have efforts to raise funds for this particular program. Here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to send out mass mailings. I've had people do that. Oh, we sent out 25 this week. I was like, you sent out 25 what? We sent out 25 proposals. How do you send out 25 proposals in 1 week? To whom it may concern. I'm like, no, that's like saying, I don't know, to whom it may concern. I don't know. You don't do that. Your applications need to be specific to the specific funder. If I received as a funder, if I received an RFP that says to whom it may concern, it's going in the round file. You didn't do your research, right? You don't know who the program officer is. Yeah, no, that's not cool. So do not send out mass mailings that says to whom it may concern. Do not apply if there is not a clear mission alignment. I have people saying, well, I serve youth and this foundation just gave out $400,000 to a youth program. And I'm like, okay, but you serve youth in STEM. They're serving youth in I don't know, art or something that has nothing to do with STEM. Just because they're serving youth, if the mission is not a clear alignment, then don't do it. Don't say, oh, well, they just gave out $400,000. No, there's got to be a clear connection. Otherwise, that's just a waste of your time and it's going to end up in the round file. I promise you, there is always more applicants than there is money. You saw with the statistics that said of the ones that receive over 1,000, only 6% fund 50%. There's never going to be a time where a funder is going to be like, oh, well, they're not really close, so we'll fund them anyway. Never going to happen. So don't do it, because it also makes you look bad as an organization. They're like, this is what I had to tell my faculty. Stop submitting these bad proposals. It's making Fullerton look bad. They remember, it's a small community. You want always for your applications to be competitive and to be sexy. You want to not be funded because they ran out of money, not because your proposal sucked. That's what you want, right? Do not ask for more than the amount that is posted. People will say to me, oh, well, it says here, you can ask for more. And I say to them all the time, do not ask for more. As a matter of fact, I have a high rate of success because I typically only ask for 1/3 of what it is that they're offering. Because that says to a funder, oh, if you don't need all my money, that means that you must be solid. So I am going to fund you because I feel more confident about you, because I know that this is a part of your funding strategy and not all of the funding strategy. That's something that I do as a grant writer when I have like my proposals down pat and I know what's going on. It's just a little trick of the trade. As a funder, when I received requests and the nonprofits did not ask for the full amount, I don't know, I just liked it better. So, but that's for my grant writers. If you are an executive director and you're writing for your programs, you can write to get them fully funded. This is the strategy to make my grant writers more successful. And I mentioned this one. Do not ignore the formatting guidelines. If it says 11-point font, there is a machine that they put your application through. If it is if it's 10.5, it's going to get rejected. If the margins, if they say 1 inch, then it should be 1 inch. If it's 1.5, it will be rejected. Line spacing, if it says double space and you do 1.5, it's going to get rejected. If they say 55 pages and you turn in 56, just like one line on it will get rejected. I've fought with faculty, I fought with nonprofit leaders. It's just one line. It's the line that will get this rejected. And I've spent 20 hours on it. Let's get rid of this one line. Follow the guidelines because they're there to eliminate. There are always more applicants than there is money. So we're looking for reasons to eliminate. What else? Do not send supplemental documentation. Your funders are not going to read it. And if you send it, it's going to piss them off and they're going to eliminate you. If they don't ask for it, do not send it. Do not ignore questions. If you don't qualify, you don't qualify. But there's no time that a funder is going to say, oh, they didn't answer this question and it's okay. They asked the question for a reason. I've had applicants just write some fluff. I'm like, this didn't answer the question. That's going to go against you, right? I'm going to say to you guys right now, if there's ever a question on an RFP that you don't understand, email me and I will give you the answer. But if you ignore the question, it's just going to move your application into the round file and you spend so much time writing it. And I've had organizations say to me, I don't understand. I've been trying and I never ever. And I'm like, let me see what you submit. And right away, I'm like, oh, because you didn't answer the question. You have an answer in the question, but you didn't answer the question. So, and then do not ask for your full organization budget. That was the one I told you before. I tend to ask for 2/3 or 1/3, just depending on where we are in our financial situation. Like if we're gonna run out of money in 6 months, I'm gonna ask for the full budget, right? But if it's the beginning of the year and strategically, and we've got some lined up, I tend to get better results from funders when I don't ask for the full organization budget. If it's a government grant, they expect you to ask for the full budget. If it's a foundation grant, they do not. So it just depends. And then do not exceed the indirect cost rate. Foundations will tell you, well, the government will too. The IDC rate is 10%. So the IDC rate is the facility, the administrative, the overhead cost. They're saying of this $250,000, you can only charge 10% of that to your salaries. Do not exceed that. If you exceed that, they will not fund you. Any questions about this so far? So in the beginning, when I did my my grant writing, I would break down like the different sections, like, oh, this is the summary, and this is the budget, and this is the explaining what each part of a grant application is and what the purpose of it is, because as a reviewer, I saw that people didn't understand it. Like with the project descriptions, it was like, oh, we're going to change the world and we want you to be a part of this. That's not what I need as a funder. So I flipped it to say, this is what a funder wants in the project description. This is what a funder is expecting in the needs statement. This is so that moving forward, when you're putting in the time to write the grant, that you are meeting the expectations of the funder. It's really important that you understand that, because when it comes down to it, when it's right here and it's like, well, who's going to get this last piece? It's going to be based off of what the funder needs and not based off of what you're doing. I know that sounds rough, but at the end of the day, that's what a funder wants. They want an organization that they are confident. Now, remember, we don't know you. We just know what you're putting on this piece of paper. If you can say, here are the measurable goals and objectives, here's what you can expect at the end of this grant period, here's who my staff are. They have X amount of years of experience. If you can put all of that out, then I feel more confident with writing a check to you. So when I say insider tips and tricks, and that's the space that I revamped this to come from, so that you have a better understanding of what should be put in a specific section. Now, is there a section that any of you guys get tripped up on? Is there, do you have a specific question about, like, when you're writing a grant, you're not clear about something? This is your time now. Anyone? Are you guys grant writers, or do you have grant writers who are supporting your organization and basically you review it and then you sign off on it? Are you guys the grant writers, or do you have grant writers? Oh, Kimberly, what's your success rate? Yes. Okay. When I was writing grants, I don't write them anymore. They wipe me out, and they wipe me out because I go hard. I know what a funder's looking for. So it takes a lot of energy and time. I'm doing the research to get the data or whatever, right? And so writing the government grants take a lot. It just takes a lot out of me, right? Okay, so 100%, woo woo. You know what? A good story goes a long way, does it not? So when I talk to people and they're like, well, what does it matter? It matters because I'm reading the same thing over and over and over. But when I hear this story about a young kid who, when they first came into the program, they were angry and no one could get to them. And they just said, oh, this person's going to either end up dead or in jail. And then after, 6 months of going through the program, they did the life skills program. We got him a mentor. And now guess what? He completed his GED. He got his AA. And now he's coming back as, a mentor. Like, that's an inspirational story. I'm gonna write a check for that, because that is a result. But it's not just a result, but it's like, all I can think is, well, if they can replicate that 50 more times, and 55 more times, then how is this going to change this community? So a sexy story goes a long way. Kim, tell me a little bit about how you support that with data.
For us, because we started in 2017, it started out with like my story, because I aged out of foster care and my vision for what I wanted to do. And that has really allowed us to get into local grants because we've built relationships with people within the community. But then them believing in us and having the support of our community and individual donations, we've then been able to start gathering the data that we need. And we now have 3 government grants that we work with. One being DOLA, DOLA, Department of Local Affairs. One is TANF, and we just got the Tony Gramscis Youth Services grant, which I feel are really difficult grants to get. We were one of 4 grants for the DOLA grant that we received, which allowed us, it was a capacity building grant. So it's been interesting because we're in this kind of, we have this niche of working with individuals that aged out of foster care. So we work with them as they're adults rather than when they're in foster care, because they're in our area, there hasn't been anyone doing this. And it's been interesting working with the grant writer, because myself being lived experience in foster care, I hate the terms foster youth, foster kids, case management.
Right.
And so it's been a lot of going back and forth of like, we're trying to change the narrative and help break down those societal ideations of who kids from foster care become. Yeah. And it is a whole changing the language.
It is. When I was executive director of Girls Inc., I refused to call my girls at risk. I started off one of my first proposals saying girls in LA County are only at risk for success. They're only at risk. Like I was like, right? Because I remember growing up with the stigma of being at risk and low income. So none of my proposals said that. Girls from under-resourced communities, girls from, but they're not low-income girls. They were not. I refuse, right? Because you put that stigma on them and you're supposed to be their advocate, and they hear you saying it. So they live into that because they look up to you. But I wanted to say to everyone really quickly, Kimberly's agency background is super powerful. Why this organization? Because she has lived experience, and look where she is now, right? So when we talk about what is the purpose of the agency background, this program started because I wanted to make a difference. The founder wanted to make a difference. And as a result, then you go into your program description. We've decided that we don't want to place these stigmas on our youth. We decided we wanted to create a better future and to give them hope. That starts by removing the stigma of what a foster youth is, right? Then you go into, well, what type of changes do you anticipate on making, and how is what you're doing different? Well, it's different because everybody's focusing on them here. We're focusing on them here. It's a bigger net. 60% of youth from foster care, especially the girls, end up sex trafficked. So we need to capture them here. You know what I mean? So it all falls together, but there is a purpose and there is something specific that a funder is looking for when they're asking these questions. And if you've been writing grants, it's really the same question over and over because the funders are looking for the same thing. Maybe slightly different. You'll have to massage it, but they want to know who's running the program, who has the skill set. If I give you this money, what am I going to see at the end? How are you going to continue the program? If I stop funding you, how much does this program really cost? And they're looking to see if it's reasonable, I can talk forever. Any other questions? You guys are doing amazing work. I remember being executive director and the bookkeeper and the grant writer and then the outreach person and and it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And so my goal is to support you to the degree that I can so we can take some of that off of your plate so that you can just be here and not here, 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 and here. So, yeah. Any other questions for me? If you want, if you weren't able to take screenshots of the examples that I provided you, if you put your email in the chat, I can put together like a Word document with just the examples. I don't care. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. The world is too hard and we have too much to do. I'm happy to compile that and give you guys, you know, because for me, if I look at something, I understand what the goal is, right? Otherwise, I'm going to make it up. And so looking at this from a funder's perspective, you can take what I wrote, and of course, it's not going to be the same thing, but you can be like, oh, I see what it is that I'm supposed to write. So I'm happy to share that with you. Yeah. I left a little bit more time. I thought there would be more questions for this one. It's a little denser. No? All right. Well, then you get the gift of time for the rest of this Thursday. I hope to see you guys next week. We're doing the logic model. The logic model is being asked a lot, especially with government grants, but I even see more foundation grants asking for the logic model. The logic model is a tool that reviewers tend to use because when people are writing their narrative, you can't really follow. But the logic model is supposed to be like a visual one-pager to help the funder understand what's the problem, what is it that you are committing to resolve that problem, what are the outcomes, short, medium, and long term. So next Thursday, we'll be covering the logic model, and I hope to see you guys there. All right, bye guys.